Hey there, beautiful, wonderful you. So I'm trying to see if my audio is working. There's no way to tell. Okay, so I'm going to assume it is. So it's been a while. It's been a bit since I've made a video. I have been really busy in some context. I've been really busy with just like my own personal goals and stuff like that, and my efforts have really been directed towards getting my skills better and my, everything that I know, improving my understanding of art and the different things that I'm trying to do right now, because I've decided to really allow myself to explore further into the human form, and it's something that's always scared me. So I've had to have a very patient process with this because it's really hard for me to some extent. Not so much in the ability to understand it or to replicate it in drawing or other form, but more so to allow myself to do that. So that's what that is leading to in this subject for today. So today's subject is around I guess I could say the idea of self-worth and spiritual practice, and I'm going to be coming at this from a bit more of a creative perspective, because that's what I do and that's who I am. But it's really the general kind of understanding of a spiritual process, which is the everyday living of life, right? So what I've discovered for myself that's been really a challenge for me is this notion of I'm worthy of time, of effort, of patience, of space, of whatever it is that I might need. And embarking on exploring a new avenue for myself has really shook my foundation of my safe zone. So it's something that, while I am very excited about that opportunity and that experience and that knowledge, there's a side to it that says, that wants to just say it's too hard, that just wants to leave hands off. And that's the main reason why I have never approached the human form, thinking it wasn't for me, that I wasn't interested in it and things of that sort. But when I was looking at other people's art, I found things that were based on human form and form of animal and anatomy and physiology of the general world around them, of animals and anything that's animated, that I found those were particularly compelling for me, that I found them to resonate with me in a way that said, I want to make that. I want to have something as beautiful as that. And when I sat and thought about how that person possibly came to an understanding of how to make this humanoid form or this animal humanoid form or whatever it is, I really was so drawn to the notion of basic human form understanding. And this is getting very technical, so I'm going to kind of swoop over that. So I realized that to start this process of understanding, I had to start at the bottom. And that's okay with me because I've done a lot of things I've done in my life, challenging things. I've always understood that I have to start somewhere. And with most of it, it's been fairly direct. Like, if you don't know gardening, you can't start at the top. You can't start at the person who's been doing it for 10 years, knowledge and experience and expertise, because you've not made all the mistakes they've made. You haven't, had the accidents. You haven't had the tragedies, and I'm also a gardener, so I'm exploring that as well. So I have a very, very hardcore understanding of gardening, so it's helping a bit. But you can't start at the top of something, right? And so Buddhism really has a wonderful approach to this, which is the beginner's mind. And the beginner's mind is something that I have had opportunities to go into occasionally throughout my life, and I generally have approached life from a beginner's mind. But as I've gotten older, I think society puts a lot of pressure on the individual to seem the expert as of a certain age. Even if you have no idea what you're talking about, even if you have no experience doing what you're doing, and let's say you've completely shifted over to a new field or a new some mastering of something, gone back to school, whatever it is. And I'm finding this online a lot too, is that people say, I can't go back to school and start over again at this age, And the response that makes the most sense, that is the most obvious, is, well, if you don't start at the beginning now, what is going to be the difference in 5 years? It's going to be 5 years no matter how you play out your 5 years. But if you start now, you'll have 5 years worth of knowledge, experience, education, go on, right? Everything. So reading that a couple of times really helped me to, every time I come into my space to create, to try these new things and attempt to make something that I can look at and think, wow, I made that, or I did that, and look at the progress I've made. It's hard because the fail-safe of challenge of that confidence level, that self-assurance level is really tenuous. It's really challenged at that point, because if you've lived most of your life having done the same things, the same comfort zones, the same habits, the same, limitations that you've put on yourself, that one day when you decide to push out of it, no matter where you're at in your life, it's going to be unnerving, right? That self-confidence, that reassurance is just, it might not be there at all. So my spiritual process in regards to that, I'm really, really glad, very, very eternally thankful that I have had it established for a few years now very strongly, and it's increasingly become that, because whenever in the past couple of weeks and months, but weeks more importantly, because it seems to be that I'm gaining a bit of momentum in this for me, but it seems that whenever I feel particularly vulnerable to that experience, to that self-criticism, to that self-worth issue, mantra, repeated, dialogue in the head, I find that I have greater capacity to reach out and ask for help for my spiritual process. And I've allowed myself to include more into that. So I have expanded my ability to accept things into my belief system, which is really now starting to include everything that's possible in the world as far as spiritual practices go. But it's going to elements that I used to disregard and really just throw off as being too cheesy, to this, to that, and now there's literally no limit to the things that I can incorporate, and to minus the lack of my understanding or acknowledgement or wherewithal of it. I have to know about it first, and then first have it come into my experience and awareness in a way that I need it. So the things that I've needed have really come very easily lately. And it's I believe, kind of a ball rolling kind of a situation. So the ball rolls down that hill and eventually picks up enough momentum that I can kind of let it roll itself and I just keep it going, right? So I'm able to have awareness throughout my day because of this spiritual practice that I have allowed for myself further and further and more and greater and greater. And it's allowed me to ask for insights throughout my day into my experience and kind of try to figure out why this is happening. I am of the very strong belief and practice that nothing comes into our experience as an individual or as a whole that is not for our benefit. It may be painful, it may be the worst thing in your life, and that is not a subject matter I will embark upon right now. I don't have the heart to go into that and defend it, but anything that happens in life is for the benefit of the individual or the group as a whole. So even things that are heartbreaking that have been happening to me, or things that have been really, really disappointing, and there's been a lot of that lately too, is disappointing after a lot of hard work was put into something and then it just was done away with. So that is spirituality at its core, right? Is the rebirth and destruction constantly. Everywhere you look, constantly happening. We're on a perpetual path to death. We never can stop this boat. It's never going to stop. And it's this idea of putting things into perspective, that self-worth. Is this really making any sense in the perspective of everything? Or in the, sometimes the ability to look at something as far as its importance in my life is also an aspect that seems to kind of help. Is this particular thought process right here really the thing I need to right now, like need to look at right now? Is it instead, why is this here? Why is this particular vulnerability coming up constantly all the time right now? So this is really exposing my lack of compassion I have for myself when I ask those questions. And I've asked for a lot of assistance from my spiritual team, my guides, all those things that I'm not completely personalized with. I don't have quite the personal relationship with it as maybe some people do. But as I grow towards that, I realize that this information is readily accessible to me in whatever context I need it to be in. So anything that I believe, you don't have to believe, and vice versa. Because it's not about what it is that I use to gain that insight. It's about that personal contact and connection to it. So it can be as simple as, like, I've always had an internal conversation, the intuition, I guess people would call that. And I'm starting to realize that that's also what people may call talking to an angel. They may think of it as talking to God. The personifications in that kind of regard of an image of a humanoid being, right, are endless. People talk to anything and everything. And so it's not a matter of what it is or how it's done. As long as it's something that is unique to the individual, that's exactly what that person will need. So today, I've been doing a lot of, I've been doing a lot more consistent tarot practice. I use one of 4 decks right now, I think is what I'm using. And I kind of go with, I pick the one based upon how I'm feeling that day, because I kind of have an idea of the vibe of each one. And there's one that I really, really like that I've used a lot, and it's one of the best ones because the practice of the origination point really resonates with me. But it's an Osho Zen pack, and I really like Osho, generally speaking. Not his followers afterwards and all the books they wrote, but the books that he wrote himself, really beautifully written. And he wrote them for a modern person and a person who struggles in modern times. And he really takes the practices of Hinduism, Buddhism, and pretty much it all, and applies it to life in a way that really is very practical, I feel. So his cards are very much like that, but they're all written with an enormous amount of compassion and love and heart. And it does approach it from a Zen perspective. The tenets in the card pack are all around Zen Buddhism, but when you read the card, it's like an amazing, like it's perfectly applicable to this point in my life, to myself, to the individual. It's amazing. So I use that pack a lot when I'm feeling vulnerable and I can't tolerate any sort of strong-armed lesson, anything that's gonna, or a reverse card meaning kind of a thing. So I did one of those today, and the subject was sorrow. And that was like, at first I was like, I can't handle this again. Like I can't handle, I got a card yesterday that while it might be incredibly important for me to receive that information, it kind of broke my heart when I read it, because I was like, I'm doing my best, and that card was kind of like punching me, a little bit like here and there and just slapping me around a little bit, And when I got this card, sorrow, I just thought, I can't handle another upsetting card. I just can't. But I went ahead and read it, and of course, as usual, the card had nothing in it that was meant to to stir up any hard emotions or anything that was too much to bear. And it was really quite beautiful, and it discussed that all of these challenges and sorrows that we face, the things that really just let us down in life, no matter what it is, it's only there to allow us for an opportunity for greater insight and understanding into ourselves. That the real way through sorrow is to go into the absolute deepest depths of what it is, to understand the understanding behind the sorrow, to really get at the core of it. Then we find that relief and release. And that's where the greatest joy lies, in my experience. And what I've noticed is that this very complex experience of my self-worth is tied up in something. And I've got a very, very kind of strong idea of where it came from in my life, because it came from an actual life experience rather than a karmic, debt experience. And it's something that while incredibly hard and painful for me, the origination of this, that the experience that surrounds that core memory of where this all began, while incredibly painful and heartbreaking, has been ongoing, and not one that I'm able to rectify very quickly, easily, or with much ease, repetitive there, but it seems to be an ongoing, like, grieving process with it, not necessarily crying, but there has been very deep felt crying, which is okay. It's not, it's, if you are a practiced spiritual person in the sense of a ceremonial practice of any kind, you've likely journeyed and altered states and all of that, and you never know what might come up. Maybe angry, you may feel elated, you might be incredibly sad, but because I allow for that space to feel that really deep crevice of sadness, like so deep in my soul, the next day, and it's not like all that strange, it really is quite normal now, that the next day then I can feel the immense joy on the other side of it. Once I've rested and recouped from that emotional upheaval, it's like all of a sudden, and it's not a giddy happiness at all. It's a very quiet happiness, but it's just this like, it's this beautiful joy that just rises in me. Because of that practice, because of my ceremonial practice, my altar time, as I call it, and that everyday, accessing of that spiritual self, that core self that says, that knows all, right? That tells me everything I need to know when I ask. It is affording me very steadily the ability to push against this boundary of challenge that is so hard and so taxing and so emotionally upsetting, just kind of in general, just not on a very shallow level, I think, not on a very deep level, but the deep level is this self-worth thing that says that I'm worth this challenge, I'm worth this inexperience, I'm worth this time to invest to learn, and not to just pretend that, because I can't do it perfectly the first time, it's not me, right? It's not my skill, it's not my this, it's not my that. That's all bullshit. That's all made up. And that has incrementally gotten better and helped me more and more. And I'm now at the point of questioning about this whole concept of this self-worth, And it's almost like, as I say this right now, I get this insight that it's almost like this rebirth, but it's like a new shell. It's like, it's not about, that's interesting. I didn't expect that. And I had a suspicion when I wrote this down earlier. But it's not about getting rid of or doing something with what has existed. Instead, rather, to just acknowledge it, right? See it for what it is, because it is a part of your experience, but let it be a part of the old self. I think that one other approach that I have might be a good piece of insight for you. There have been moments when I have really distressing thoughts or, not reactions, but it's like thoughts, like spontaneous thoughts that come up, like opinions kind of, I guess, just about the world with pretty much no provocation. And sometimes I'll have these like, I can't really give an example because they happen spontaneously and they're not conscious at all. They're very, very subconscious things. But it's like having a spontaneous I'm just angry, or something, or I'm just upset, or I'm just this, but it's not an action, it's a thought. And when I ask the why and I can't find an answer and there's nothing there, I have allowed myself to say, okay, there's no core to this. There is no root to this. There is nothing behind this. I'm not pretending and hiding from it. That's something to be very aware of, is that if you are hiding from something or pretending it away, that's important information too. But I wasn't doing any of that. And, sometimes these things don't have a core, right? And those seem to go away very easily with no real challenge. And I don't fight them and they don't fight me. And those are, I am done processing, as I'm starting to see right now, if I'm starting to get close to being done processing something that has been really working, I've been really working towards, and like right now, this particular aspect of my processing is very tied to my self-worth, is very much a component of it. I'm starting to see that, because I asked today a question during my open space time, and what I found is, I don't know what I found. But I asked a question, and I believe through my practice, but things I've read and things that have helped me understand this, is that when you ask a question, it's always answered. It's just a matter of if you're listening or not. So I've realized that just by asking, I've already answered it. I just have to wait to hear it. That's it. And the hearing that I'm getting is, this is not for you to do anything with. This is for you just to let it go. Just let it go. And it's funny because I think my therapist told me that a few times, is that sometimes there's things that you just let go. That's it. That's all you have to do is just let go of them. It's like letting go of a balloon. Just let it go and fly in the wind. And I don't think it's going to just zap back my I'll say expression, because that's kind of what this is all about. But this isn't about curing my self-esteem. This is more about letting it loose, letting it go. I haven't always felt this vulnerable my whole life. I haven't always felt this inept, this incompetent. It wasn't until the past like maybe 10 years that this all started. And I haven't always felt this way. And I wanted that girl that was before all of this, I wanted her back, because she was a wonderful person. She was really outgoing. She was very happy with herself and the world around her, and I'm finding myself to be very angry and bitter and upset nowadays. And it's just, there's a deep joy and happiness in me, but there's also this like aggression that is so frustrated by my experience. And I wanted the fun version of myself back. I wanted the self of me that I enjoyed being around, because this version of me, I appreciate her and I accept her and I welcome her in wholeheartedly, but I get tired of being her. I get really tired of being her, but the self of me that gets beaten up a lot, by myself, by my own words, by my own thoughts, or the repeat of these thoughts. So I think it's letting go. And I'm tired now. This tends to wear me out. But that's good. That means I've worn out the brain. I've worn out the thoughts. Oh, maybe that's what this is all about. If you pay attention to the world around you, and I speak to myself when I say this, you will see that everything you need possible for your wonderful experience to happen, for your transformation to be further, to start, to begin, to end, that all of these things, everything that you need in your life for you is in your immediate environment. It's all around you. It's just right there. You just have to look. That's it. You just have to listen, right? Just reach out, touch, touch. So I absolutely think that is the answer to this all, is that we just need to open our eyes a little bit more and look a little bit longer, and right there we will see just what it is that we need. We just have to allow it and accept it into our experience, because it's not about doing anything with where we've been. It's just about letting it go. There we go. Much love, much love, much love. And thank you so much for being you, a truly wonderful and beautiful spiritual being. Mwah.